your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what good to say? I doubt it will stand up to something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, everybody. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So if you're listening to us right now on iTunes, please leave a kind review if you like what you hear. I want to shout out a couple of stand-up dates that I have coming up.
You're not going through your mic.
I'm not going through my mic.
No.
What could be the issue? Okay, let me fix the setting really quick. What could be going on with my microphone? Let's try this. What about now? It should work now. Okay, cool. I'm going to redo this. Yeah! Welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We're on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. Please leave a review if you like what you hear. I got a bunch of stand-up dates coming up. Boom! There's my website. This weekend, I will be in Jersey. This might be my last show in Jersey this year. So come on out if you're in the New Jersey area at all, Long Island, New York. I'll be at the Comedy Cove in Springfield, New Jersey this weekend. One show Friday, one show Saturday, both at 9 o'clock. I'll be performing with the very funny Kevin Dombrowski. So come on out, Jersey. Then I'll be in Connecticut next Thursday, September 22nd at the Stress Factory Comedy Club. Then I'll be in New Orleans, September 30th and October 1st. 4 shows at the Comedy House, New Orleans. Then we got the Comedians of the Compound show at the Orlando Improv on Thursday, October 27th. Come see myself, Gino Bisconti, Anthony Cumia, Alex Stein, Lila Hart. This show is going to be a ton of fun. There'll be a lot of people in town for the Friday Night Tights Geeks and Gamers meetup, which is a couple days later. So definitely come on out if you're in the Florida area at all. And then after this show, we are starting our content house, which is going to include a 48-hour live stream with about 20 or 25 or so YouTubers, comedians, adult film stars. It'll be a fun bunch. It'll be a fun group, and that's going to start right after this show at the Orlando Improv. So check that out. I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Cushy Dreams. We love Cushy Dreams here at the Chrissie Mayr podcast. I think I personally have really liked these pre-roll. Ooh, yes. They help with sleep, relaxation, feeling good, and more. Oh yeah, let's see what this website has to offer. You know how you wanted Cushy Dreams to come out with gummies? Well, guess what they did? And I got some gummies right here. Ba-bam! In all types of different flavors. These are watermelon. I can't wait to try them out. Did you know that these gummies will light up your brain like a Christmas tree? This is a funny read. And make you feel giggly and warm and fuzzy and awesome. Yes, they did. These are Delta 9 THC gummies. Yes, you heard me. Delta 9 THC. That's the real deal OG THC. And it ships legally to you. Each gummy contains 10 milligrams of THC, and they come in 4 euphoric flavors: strawberry, watermelon, green apple, and tangerine. Go to cushydreams.com. That's KUSHY dreams.com. At the checkout, use promo code CMP to get 20% off your next order. Get your gummies with promo code CMP. Get that 20% off today. You can get CBD hemp flower. You can get the pre-rolls, which I think are pretty easy. They're very portable. They come in these little tubes. Just throw them in your purse. Throw them in your pocket. Check out cushydreams.com. Get yourself relaxed. Yeah. Holidays are coming. You got to get rid. New show alert. I'm going to be in San Diego, February 24th and 25th. What's the venue?
I sent you the link.
Okay. Oh, yes, I have a link here. Thank you, filing cabinet. Ooh, mic drop comedy in San Diego. This looks like I'm going to throw this website up on the screen real quick. Yes, it's me in February. It feels good to have dates next year. Something to live for. This is on Claremont and Mesa Boulevard in San Diego. Come check me out in February in California. I have not been to California since the very beginning of the pandemic. I was there right before the pandemic kicked off. So it'll be fun to go back. I'm looking forward to it. But not more than I'm looking forward to this next guest. Woo! I love this girl not only because she's a woman and has red hair and has kind of like a fun, cute, retro style, but because she is a tech journalist. She is the creator of NBTV Media, and she discusses a lot of issues in the tech space that have to do with privacy. She's also a crypto babe, so we'll get into all that good stuff. Naomi Brockwell, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you? Look at you. You're coordinating your glasses with your wall.
Well, I must do that, and if I want to change glasses, I have to repaint. It's a whole thing.
You're funny. Oh my god. It looks so good. I love your style. I really love anybody with kind of like a fun retro or like rockabilly type style. I used to dress that way more often, but I'm finding like the heels are a little bit too much for me these days, but it looks very cute on you. I'm loving it.
In the age of remote working, I hardly even wear pants anymore. Like this is great. No one's looking at my feet, so I'm pretty happy.
That's true. That's true. You could very much not be wearing pants. Ooh, JR is in the chat. Naomi is awesome. Awesome. So let's get a little bit of background about you. How did you get into the content creating world?
Well, this could end up in a whole nother tangent. Like you think we're talking about privacy, but it's been a roundabout trip. Long story is I got into privacy because I realized that it's super important. I realized that there's very little you can do in the world, very little freedom you can have if you don't have privacy as well. And so I just figured that it's the foundation of free speech. It's the foundation of freedom of the press. It's the foundation of freedom of money. I think it's just so important. But like content creation, gosh, that's a whole other thing. I started out as an opera singer and then went into TV production.
Way.
Yeah.
When you say that, do people immediately demand that you start singing?
Well, it's been like over a decade since I've sung. I started doing like parody videos on my channel because I was like, I miss music. And that's as much as anyone gets these days, is like ridiculous, dumb, parody songs generally about Bitcoin. And I haven't even done that for a few years, but
and opera singing is probably difficult because you can't just like go do karaoke and like do your opera singing. I don't think people would be ready for that.
I don't think they would be ready for that. No, I was pretty neurotic when I was an opera singer. I had no social life. I couldn't go to cafes to talk to people because you're like a high-collar tourist. So your voice goes. I have maybe a few hours a day of good vocals that I could have, and I wasn't going to waste them chatting with people in a loud environment. So I just had no social life, and I would never do karaoke. But the good thing now is that I do karaoke all the time, and I can scream those songs. I can sing AC/DC. see, like it's a far less neurotic life now, so it's great.
Wouldn't that be just hilarious? Like you're like dating. I don't know if you're like with anybody right now, but like to say that to a guy, be like, look, I only have about 3 to 4 hours of like good voice time. I don't even know if you're worth it. Like I
Yeah,
don't know if
pretty
hanging with
much.
you is worth the chat. That is
I like
so
it.
neat. You're multi-talented. You're
I,
like a triple threat.
great at doing a lot of things very mediocrely. So I'll take the compliment, but you haven't heard me sing. So
Not yet. Hit it.
not
No. I've started to become interested in privacy, I guess maybe post 9/11 or learning about what happened post 9/11 with the
Mhm.
Patriot Act. And I feel like so many other people, we were just so naive to what's been happening. And, there was a time, I think maybe it was during the pandemic, where I got like super paranoid and I killed off a bunch of apps and I turned off like location settings on everything. I'm like, they're watching us, they're looking for me. And I've probably slacked and they're probably all back on again. Was there a moment for you that you started to become really interested in privacy and like data collection?
Yeah, I mean, I started out in the crypto world, and I was thinking that this was, a new era, because you had this point in time around '08 where there's the financial collapse, you had all these TARP bailouts, you had all these, corporations who are basically getting paid out by taxpayers. And I'm like, this is a terrible cronyist system. I do not like it. So when crypto came around, I was super excited. I was like, finally, we have an alternative. We have an alternative financial system. This is monetary freedom. No one was talking about it. It was only geeks. It was only people who liked code. I'm not a coder. I was into it because I was into economics. So I was like, wow, this could be a way to take back control of the money supply. People's savings don't have to get inflated away. I was pretty into it. And I knew how tightly controlled the financial rails were. And I thought that this was cool because it's the first time we had an alternative money that couldn't be shut down. There was no central focal point that could be targeted, like no CEO, no central server that could be unplugged. So it was really exciting. And then as the years went by and you saw these smear campaigns in the media and like, oh, this is a terrible thing, it's only for drug dealers or whatever. And I was like, oh, actually, it's a tool for financial inclusion. Like I can send some money to someone in Nigeria to help them build a farm and no one can stop
It's
me.
a scam.
Yeah. But the more I started to realize, like, it wasn't enough to have a tool that, the whole apparatus couldn't be targeted, because if individuals could still be targeted, it wasn't good enough. You needed privacy. You needed to be able to hide the fact that you were using this if it came down to it. And obviously, Bitcoin's not illegal. People can use it. But I could see a future where it didn't matter what decentralized tech you had, if you could be, isolated and targeted, and like you could basically be coerced into, handing over your money, or forced to stop using this thing or tracked or whatever. So I just started to realize how important privacy was in the scheme of everything. And then Snowden's memoirs came out, and I was hooked. I was reading this thing, and I'm like, what is X key score? What is, Prism? What is turbulence and turmoil and all these programs? And I'm like, are you kidding me? All of this stuff is literally been taken from every search I do on the internet. So I went down a giant rabbit hole. I started, like, I'm not a techie person. I did my degree in classical music, right? So I'm reading about this stuff for the first time. And the first few videos I did on this, obviously the YouTube audience is all like, you got it wrong. But it was a wonderful journey for me, because through that, I met all of these experts who actually, you got it wrong, but here's what you need to know. And I'm like, great. And so you start talking to more people, you start diving into this world, you start realizing, first of all, that the first step was the shock at how overwhelming all of this is and how much data is being collected and how little privacy you have. The second phase, I call it enlightenment, is where you realize that there are so many cracks in the surveillance system, and they can be learnt, and you can protect yourself. You just have to learn the right tools. So that was when I started to be like, I felt reinvigorated. I started to dive into this and teach people, how can you protect yourself? It's not enough to say, privacy's dead on the internet, don't bother about it. It's like, no, it's not. It can be achieved, and it's important to try to achieve it. So that became like this whole other journey for me, and that's been my focus for the past few years now.
I really should know more about Edward Snowden, but like, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. He kind of became Is he basically on lockdown? Is he like being held up? Like, is he locked up in like a prison somewhere, has he fled, or he's hiding? And okay, so like, I'm probably getting so much of this wrong. He basically told everybody the extent to which the government was doing surveillance, and or did he get like out government secrets? This is like, oh, borderline embarrassing how little I know about him. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard about him a bunch. Like, always meant to like look into it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this reminds me of a conversation I had with John Stossel, because he interviewed Edward Snowden. I was a producer for him for many years. And in his piece, he, he had this moment where he's like, I don't know anything about this guy. Is this Julian Assange? Is this Chelsea Manning? Is this Edward Snowden? Like, who are these people related? Like, and I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat. A lot of people just kind of
feel
hear these.
retarded. Like, I really should know.
No, not at all. Not at all. So Snowden's story is that he worked in a bunch of different positions. He worked for the CIA. He worked for the NSA. He did all of these things. Basically, it got to a point where he was, and I'm probably going to actually ruin this story a little bit, but I believe he was tasked with diving into Chinese surveillance and looking at the extent to which, China has this crazy surveillance apparatus. And so he started doing work for whichever agency he was with at the time, researching this. And then it kind of dawned on him like, well, if he's researching this and he understands these techniques, there's no chance that, other sectors of the government don't already understand these techniques as well. And let's be honest, they're probably implementing these techniques. There's probably a lot more surveillance going on than we realize. So he went down this big rabbit hole until it got to the point where he started uncovering all of this stuff. And he's like, this is unconstitutional. What's going on? It's not being voted on. The public isn't even aware. We have secret courts. We have secret governments. There's crazy stuff going on and people should know about it. So he basically flew to Hong Kong, reached out to a couple of well-known journalists and said, hey, I don't want to release all of this data that I found, but I have a lot of it. I need journalists to go through this and figure out what's important that the public knows, and kind of be the, oh, my earphone fell out. I'll keep going. I can still hear you in one ear. And basically, you be the point person in making sure that whatever's released isn't going to hurt anyone. So he worked with Laura Poitras, he worked with Glenn Greenwald, and they released a ton of information. And the result of that has been that courts have found that the government was involved with illegal activity. It was unconstitutional. Some of these blanket surveillance programs have been shut down, but there are probably countless more that have not been shut down.
Yeah.
And so it's really just a journey of, we've got all these things going on. Most people don't know that they're going on. And who has the right to decide on this stuff on everyone else's behalf? Like, should everyone get to know about this stuff? Like, it's a question, because some people say, well, national security, not everyone should know about this. It's important that we're trusted to protect you. And other people on the other side saying, no, actually, politicians serve us. We should get a say in this. This is our country. We're the ones paying for it all. So there's like a big debate going on. I are on the side of more information is better. I think that people have the right to know what's going on. And I think people should proactively research this stuff so they can make more informed decisions about their life.
And what would you say to someone who's like, well, what's the big deal with privacy? I mean, like, I'm not embarrassed of my search history, or I'm not a person of note, or I'm not a celebrity, or I'm just a guy who works at a bank and I do bowling on the weekends. Like, I don't have anything to hide. Why should I be concerned with this?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to answer that. A lot of people use the argument, I'm not interesting. Why would anyone care? First of all, recognize that all your data is collected, whether you're interesting or not. And then there's the question of, well, one day, do you plan to become interesting? Well, you probably start protecting your data now, right? Because that data is forever. Regimes come and go, social norms change, but that data stays in a database that is permanently associated with your real world identity. So if you think that societal norms might one day change, maybe abortion becomes illegal one day, or maybe, something else that you're passionate about. Maybe the federal government really starts cracking down on marijuana and it's like, actually,
or
we're
flaming hot Cheetos.
Yeah, maybe they're like, flaming hot Cheetos are a sin. They're a moral atrocity and we need to clamp down. And you've got this long history of every time you swipe your credit card of buying flaming hot Cheetos or whatever. So it's important that you just be mindful of all of this stuff. And it's not just a matter, like, I mean, there's so many levels of it. There's the level of, well, one day you might actually be targeted by people in power. Like, an example that is very real world example is China implemented a social credit system. That social credit system dictates whether you can get rooms in a hotel, what school your kids can go to, whether you're allowed to take
Loans,
fast
yeah.
transportation or whether you're only allowed to take slow transportation. Like, it affects your daily life. Now, we have a similar surveillance apparatus to China. We have the same, degree of surveillance. It's just a matter of, whether or not we're using it for nefarious purposes right now. Then there's the question of, will we be using it for increasingly nefarious purposes in the future? Because surveillance trajectory is headed in one direction. So that should be something people should be worried about. But then on the other side of things, there's like the private business side. A lot of people don't realize that so much of their data is just collected. Like, these companies know inside out your preferences and your habits. So you do get scammed on the internet. And when I say scammed, I mean, use that term loosely, but in your search results, you will be fed different prices according to whether a company thinks you'll be willing to pay more for something. Things like flight search results, all of that stuff is manipulatable, and it is manipulated. So it's just, it's important to be aware of all the ways that you might be manipulated in your life. And I think it's important for people to protect themselves from that.
It's easy to feel hopeless, and, like, especially if you're not someone who knows anything about tech, you don't work in a tech field. It's like you can barely remember your iPad password. It feels like, where do you even begin? How do you know who to trust? What if you have no friends who are smart like you are, like, in these areas?
I am everyone's friend. I am all of your friends. I will help you.
Friends with Naomi.
Yeah, it's hard. I would say, like, but right off the bat, if you're using Gmail, I would stop, right? So every time you receive
Gmail?
No Gmail. They see everything in your inbox. They use that data. They create dossiers on you. They have so much information about you. Not only do they have dossiers on you, but there's this thing called the fire hose of information that is used in a system called real-time bidding. Now, we know that Google makes their money from advertising. Now, how does that work? Because Google says, like, we don't sell your data. Like, what's actually happening is so much worse. They have, I think it's in the United States, it's around 5,000 partners where they're called like advertising partners. So they will basically say, every time you go to a website, you know how there are those little boxes that appear and they're empty for a split second and then suddenly there's an ad in them. What's happening there is that website is saying, okay, well, this is Naomi that's just appeared. Who wants to bid on Naomi's eyeballs? This is everything we know about her. These are her sexual preferences.
That kind of makes me feel special, though.
No, Chrissy, no.
I would like to think that it's maybe Coach and Michael Kors duking it out for who wants to be who wants my eyeballs.
Well, the problem is that all of that data doesn't just stay with Google. It's also sold to bounty hunters. It's sold to data brokers. Did you know that there were a bunch of cell providers that were caught selling people's real-time location data to hackers? So, like, all of this stuff gets pretty creepy pretty fast, and it's easy for us to just think, well, I'm getting a better pair of Nike shoes. They're showing me exactly what I want. It's like, sure, some people might, but other people are using that data nefariously against you, and you're probably not even aware of it. And it's like pretty abstract. So a lot of people, it's hard to get them interested in this topic, because it's not until, like, your next door neighbor gets dragged out of their house, right, that you kind of understand how important some of this stuff could be. But, I've had a lot of friends who've had a ton of money stolen from them, just from, phishing attacks and people knowing certain information that they shouldn't have known, that they were able to target people. All of this stuff, it's important to know that the internet is increasingly becoming a battlefield, and we all need to get better versed. But there are super simple things you can do. Like, email is one. Just don't give that data away to Google. Use a private email, like, TutorNoda, Proton Mail. These are great choices. Don't use SMS. Don't use Facebook Messenger. Don't use, even WhatsApp isn't that great. Use something like Signal, which is end-to-end encrypted and super private. When you're browsing, the browser you use, are you using Chrome or are you using Brave? Because Chrome is taking everything it can about you, every bit of searching that you're doing.
DuckDuckGo.
So DuckDuckGo, I used to be a big proponent of them. So for anyone who doesn't know what DuckDuckGo is, it started out as a search engine. Now, a search engine is different from a browser. Search engine is basically the page that indexes all of the internet and says, you know, oh, you're looking for this key term. Here are pages that match up, right? So DuckDuckGo used to be my go-to because they were staunchly neutral in their results. Google manipulates things and shows you things that it wants you to see. So you'll notice during elections, it'll show you certain things. Autofill will say certain things. This all, you know, this all works to manipulate people. I don't like the idea of that. I think it's, you know, I'd rather just get things unfiltered and rather than them ranking things. I'll rank them myself. I'll take a look at them and I'll decide what's important. DuckDuckGo used to be that. It's also privacy preserving. Then they decided that they start filtering results and deciding what's disinformation and what's not. So I'm just turned off by that. I mean, they still say that they're privacy preserving, but that was such a core foundational principle of their company. I just don't trust them anymore. So I use Brave Search instead.
I've never even heard of Brave Search.
Yeah, so Brave is a browser, but they now have launched Search. The thing with search engines is it's really tough to compete with Google. When you have a company that knows so much about you, it can show you really good search results. So they also have these bots, spiders that crawl across the web and index everything. It's not as nefarious as it sounds. I see the look on your face. You're like, spiders?
Everything you're saying not to do, I'm doing. And I'm just like, oh, I do all these things.
So Brave is like, they haven't been around for as long as Google's. They don't have all of the same web crawlers indexing things. So you're not going to get as good search results. I find that like 99% of the time it's totally fine. When that 1% of the time comes up and I can't find what I want, I use Start Page, which is a privacy preserving front end for Google. It basically a page you can go to startpage.com, you type in your search and it uses Google search results, but it does it in a way that Google can't track those queries back to you.
So I'm still trying to like, let's say somebody's like, well, what's the point of, I guess, caring about this? Don't I want to be catered to better? Don't I, like, if I'm always just searching, I don't know, fruit gift baskets or whatever, don't people be like, oh, I want the best possible product marketed to me. What's so bad about them knowing my consumer habits? If you're somebody who likes to buy stuff from the internet, is it because they will ultimately try to sell you more stuff or stuff you don't need, or they're taking all that information and they're putting it into like an AI bot and using it to like create a new race of people?
I like the sound of that last one. It's like so evil. It's like they're taking it and cloning your DNA.
I was just on a Frankfeld Bureau show and he was telling me that there's like an AI bot that like does painting like without like all by itself. They're writing stories really cool by themselves. And it's like, I'm just freaked out, like doing the sentence finishing on your phone. What's it called? Like the autocomplete.
Yeah. Well, I think
so. What's the ultimate, like worst case scenario?
So I think that stuff's great, and if there were a way for me to get that stuff without bad people also getting access to my information, I might be okay with it. But the problem is that this is a major double-edged sword. And every time you put something out there that is not privacy preserving, you can bet that most governments in the world will end up with that information. So they will know things about you that can be used against you or to manipulate you or whatever. And it's also being, as I said, bought by data brokers. It's being bought by companies that actually can't even protect that data. I mean, you've probably heard of the Equifax breach, years ago, where there was this big class action lawsuit and everyone who participated got it like 7 cents. And that's because they released so much personal information about people. So like if you wanted to know, I think a lot of people don't realize the extent to which data breaches expose private things about you. And it's not just your phone number. It's that phone number is then tied as a unique identifier to everything you do, to your government interactions, to your purchases, to your social media. It becomes a way that people can actually then search for other things. And a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to actually find really personal stuff about people. Like if you wanted to look for your neighbor and find out about I mean, you've probably put that into some app.
Yeah.
that's tracking something, or told your doctor and they just didn't, secure that data, and now it's in a data breach somewhere. It gets really abstract thinking about this, and people's default is, well, it's convenient and I like the nice shoes that I'm shown. And I totally understand that. But I do think that we should be scared. I think that we should start proactively protecting that, because the future isn't going to be all shiny new shoes. The future might be something much darker. And maybe we luck out and maybe the future is actually great and we just keep getting nicer and nicer shoes. Or maybe people in power collect more power, and that, power consolidation just goes in one direction, which means, you want to control the population a little bit more. You want to take away a little bit of freedom of choice. You want to take away a little bit of freedom of speech. You want to start, curtail people's, daily activities or individual choices. Honestly, history has shown that that's generally the way that things often move. And if we're looking at China and what's going on right now there with the surveillance state, the fact that we have the technical capabilities to do everything that they're doing plus more, all it takes is for one bad person in power to start lobbying for, us to use that information to go after a certain group of society that they don't like. And suddenly we start this descent, and it's very difficult to climb out of. So while we're looking at shiny shoes right now, I think it's important to just keep in mind that we are building a surveillance apparatus that can be used for tremendous bad. And if you're at all worried that someone might get their hands on that stuff and use it nefariously in the future, you should start to protect yourself and just put out less information about yourself.
It sounds like this is something everyone should be interested in, but like I think in particular, like I think fans of mine, people who tend to watch this show, the kinds of shows that I'm interested in, I think about the kind of people I surround myself with. I think it's even more particularly important for you to be a little bit more private when and where you can, especially if you engage in like wrong think, wrong speak, right? Like, it could affect your networking. Like if you want to do something about the way things are going, or if you want to be an agent of change and I mean, like everybody knows what I'm talking about, but it's like, if you want to be part of a group that might want to like fight the power in some way, or
if you're not happy with the
you can be
status
a target.
quo, or if you think in the future you might not be happy with the status quo, I'm sorry, but the status quo is that the people in power have a lot of leverage over you right now. So if you ever think you'll be in a position where you might want to push back, you better put yourself on higher ground, and that means starting to protect your data.
Damn, I'm inspired. I feel like I'm about to like cut this short and change all my passwords and shit, because I have a Proton Mail. I just never use it because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm a Proton Mail kind of gal. Like, I don't know.
All right, so your next steps, here's what you'll do. You will forward your emails to your Proton Mail account. You will then download the data from your Gmail. You'll download it into like a web client, which is like an app that you run on your computer, which can download all of those messages. So you'll have a complete archive of everything in Gmail. Once you have that complete archive and you have it backed up, delete everything in Gmail, because remember, everything there is subpoenaable. Is that a word? Subpoenaable. Subpoenaable. So if there's anything in there, like I would delete that, and I would put it in something that's end-to-end encrypted or encrypted at rest, like Proton Mail is, and I would just try transferring over and just using that.
Wow. Okay. This is interesting. This is enlightening. And because I did hear about, there was a Twitter whistleblower that was talking all about how I guess people can remote hack into, or they have in the past remote hack into some more like high profile accounts, how they had even at one point, like they had a Chinese national or like a Chinese spy basically on payroll working for Twitter, and that there was up to about 4,000 employees of Twitter who all had access to like the geolocating aspects of Twitter. Yeah. And it's like, I'm like, oh, that's so many people that, you know what I mean? You think this information is just going to a few, I don't know, individuals that it's related to their job, but there's just, especially if you're somebody who is, a little bit trying to fight the power. It's a little bit, it's scary when you hear stuff
Yeah.
like
Did you
this.
know that it's trivially easy to find someone's like real-time location data? You just buy it. And do you know why it's easy? It's because every app we have on our phone generally says, do you give me permission to access your location? And even if you don't give it permission, like Google Maps is notorious for this. There are like 7 different areas where you have to say no geolocation, no It's not just as simple as like a button you can switch off. So being mindful of which apps you actually have downloaded on your phone, being mindful that cell towers are constantly pinging your location. Like, I mean, we're going into tinfoil hat territory, but when you start to translate that into real world scenarios where, if you have a stalker, they can find your real world location, easily. And so just being mindful of protecting that data can be really important. I did a deep dive recently about cell phones versus VoIP phones, VoIP numbers. So the difference being that cell numbers associated with a little SIM or an eSIM, and they ping cell towers. VoIP uses the internet. So you just need a Wi-Fi connection, or you need like SIM data, but it basically, one of them allows your number to be an identifier that can track you via cell towers, and the other one can't, because you can use a VPN. So just like transitioning over from a cell number to a VoIP number can be a really powerful tool to stopping this kind of tracking. Like little things like that. It gets pretty interesting.
Oh my God, I've never even heard of VoIP. It just sounds like a cartoon. Like VoIP, it's like what happens when you like pull the rug out from under somebody.
Yeah,
This is what's happening
that's
to
what's
me right
happening
now.
to all of us. The rug is being pulled.
Someone in the chat said I would delete TikTok immediately. See, this is the one thing I did right. Well, I probably have it. I just don't use it, but I could probably go a step further and delete it because I knew that was compromised way back when.
Yeah. I have a
Um,
TikTok account, and I only started it because I wanted to make privacy tips for people, which is hilariously ironic that I created a TikTok account so that I could teach people about privacy. But I figure that they're the people who need to know about it the most. They're the ones who are probably using this app, not realizing how much data is being taken away. So I actually only have it. I have a different device. I have like 5 phones. So I have a device that's just
Yes,
for
I love
certain
that.
social media apps, and it's never connected. There's no SIM in it, so it can't be tracked location. The internet is always off, and I just turn it on with a VPN in front of it whenever I wanted to use that stuff. So like it gets, I mean, you could go down a whole rabbit hole. You can get to some pretty extreme methods for protecting your privacy. It's totally possible. I would say for the average person, just look at the areas where you could do, 80%, get 80% of the effectiveness with 20% of the effort. And that is switching over your messaging communications to something like Signal, switching over your email to something like Proton Mail, switching over your browser to something like Brave, and switching over your search engine to something like Start Page or Brave or DuckDuckGo, whichever your preferred one is. Just taking big steps like that actually goes a really long way.
It's like a blackout curtains, but for your life,
I like that.
You could sell this, Naomi, because this is like very overwhelming. Like you could sell a package, like set a price and be like, look, I will do all of this for you. Because it's
launched right here on this show.
Yeah, I'll be your first
I'm creating
customer.
a package.
Because I just want to hand you money and have you do all these things for me, because it's like very intimidating, but it's very important. These
well,
are
it's all for free currently. So I put out
Aww.
tutorials that walk people through it. But you're right. Maybe I should just package it and say, here's step 1, this video. Do those things.
Wouldn't that be so funny? You start a business and then you ultimately just like get all these people's information, and then like you turn over to the dark side, and then you're just like
it is tough. There's one person that I follow who's like, I really, really like their podcast, and I'm pretty inspired by them because they have a mailing list. So it's Michael Basil. He's a big privacy expert. If you want to go the extreme route, I recommend reading his books on extreme privacy. But his book's this thick, and I've read it and written notes all through all of it many times, but it's complicated, and you have to know command line code, and you have to you have to do things that are pretty technical, and if there are glitches, you have to figure out why there are glitches. But anyway, I'm inspired by the way he does things, because he has a newsletter and he has people buying his book. He does all this stuff, and they're very, very vocal about how they do not keep that data about customers. Like they don't have a mailing list because they don't want to collect people's emails. So they just have an RSS feed and people can, download it from the website or whatever. So I think things like that, it's important for not just consumers to start being mindful, but if you own a business or you have the ear of someone who owns a business or you work for someone and you think that they could have better privacy practices, just see what you can do to sway things in the direction of less data collection or just taking steps to protect your consumers' data. It's better for liability because if you ever get hacked, that's a lot of information you're putting at risk and you could get in trouble. But it's also just good to help you sleep soundly at night, knowing that you're helping people who probably didn't know that they shouldn't be handing over information to anyone.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm going to go to a couple of these questions. Oh, Spectral Citizen, thank you for becoming a member. NVIDIA, late night pajama stream was a big hit. When's the next one? Okay, unrelated. Thank you. The 80s chick last night looked great. 80s chic. Oh, he's talking about me. My show.
80s chic? Do you have any pictures?
I think I could dig some up. Yeah. Looked great with the headband last night. Okay, a lot of these comments are about me specifically. What and how is a content house? Okay, it's I'm running a house. I'm inviting like 25 people over, and we're gonna just like have a 48-hour live stream. Are you in Australia, Naomi?
No, I'm in America. I've been in America for 12 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to tell me that I was wrong and that you were actually from New Zealand, and then I was going to feel horrible.
I'm actually British. No. No, Australia originally and now America.
Okay. Whew. Okay, join Chrissy's Discord. We will be playing Jackbox party games after FNT tomorrow night. I don't even know what that is. Discord.gg/Chrissie Mayr official. Okay, thanks, NVIDIA. What's the most secure search engine? From Matthew Hammond.
Most secure search engine. So in terms of like what data gets sent off, I would say the worst is if you're using Google search engine, just don't use it. It's really bad for privacy. Okay. I think that I use Brave. I really like their ethos. They're a very privacy first company. Some people like DuckDuckGo. As I said, I don't like the content manipulation. They're okay for privacy. But I'd go for something like Brave. Would be my recommendation.
Oh, okay, cool. From Matthew, are tech companies agents of the government? Woo! He always has the best questions.
Of the government. So in what sense do you mean agents? So when Snowden had his revelations in 2013, one of the programs that was revealed was called the PRISM program. And that basically meant that the government got access to the servers of a bunch of companies. So what does that mean in the scheme of things? So in America, we're kind of protected in theory from the government just willy-nilly collecting information about us. We have the Fourth Amendment, which basically says, listen, if we don't have probable cause, we can't go searching through all your stuff. Then the digital age happened and the government said, oh, actually, we don't count this as being your personal stuff. We'll rifle through it. The reason that they're able to justify this is through something called the third party doctrine. This was something that came out that said, if you give your data to another company, you no longer have control of that data. You no longer own that data. So if you're opting in to use AT&T and AT&T has data with you, screw whatever contract you have with AT&T or whatever presumptions you're making about your privacy. The government has said that they have the right, AT&T has the right to do with your data, what they want to, because you don't own it anymore. Now, what that means is that the government, instead of getting a search warrant and going to you and saying, give us this data, they just go to the company and say, you hand it over because we're nice. And sometimes companies are like, absolutely, whatever you say. Sometimes companies push back, in which case the government can say, well, if you don't do this, we'll file a big antitrust lawsuit against you, in which case they comply. There are lots of ways that the governments can leverage this without going through technically legal means to get those search warrants or whatever. They can just get that data, and it's deemed technically legal because of this third-party doctrine. So when you say are tech companies agents of the government, I think that they are. A lot of them are unwittingly. PRISM program, it's clear that a lot of companies willingly gave the government access, like direct access to their servers. Some of that access happened without these companies knowledge is what it seems, although details around all this are very murky, and the companies do not talk about it, and every company like vehemently denies it. So I would say that this private and public separation gets very murky in recent years because of things like the third party doctrine and because of the immense power the government has to just leverage whatever they have on these companies to get the information that they need. So yeah, I just be aware, choose companies that have a good reputation, who are known for pushing back against bad government demands. There are also companies that will push back and say, listen, we don't think you have jurisdiction to get this information, or we don't think that you have probable cause, or whatever. There are companies that push back. So I would say that you can start voting with your wallet. You can start choosing companies and patronizing services that you think are looking out for your best interests.
And a really good example of this is I saw Coinbase had put together, I guess, a list or a website of all the politicians that are anti-crypto, which is good to know.
Yeah, Coinbase has done some great work pushing back. The IRS put out like a blanket John Doe request to them where they said, listen, we want access to all of these accounts, and Coinbase pushed back. It's unclear to what extent they're able to push back. I mean, they're a publicly traded company. The government has a lot of leverage in a situation like that. But I think they do good work to fight for their users. I think companies like Apple do good work, but even then, Apple in 2018 tried to encrypt iCloud backup, and they were going to, and then the FBI said, don't. And so Apple basically tried to fight with them on that and eventually conceded. So no iCloud backups are end-to-end encrypted. If you have your phone synced to back up all your data, it means that all your private photos are in this database that Apple employees can get access to, that government employees can get access to, that hackers can get access to. None of that stuff is secured with encryption, with end-to-end encryption, I should say. So, you know, companies do try and push back. Some companies do a better job than others. And it's good to just kind of keep an eye out on which companies are doing what, so you can guide your decisions.
Yeah, the worst thing would be to have like your unflattering nudes be leaked. Like if the ones you look good and thin, I'd be like, okay. But
absolutely,
the ones
like
where you're
start
blinking,
leaking those nudes from 20 years ago, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
But now,
yeah. From Isabella Live. Were I going to deny my services? Were I not satisfied? Is the only thing that gets it done next to Jesus. Okay, this is like a random comment. Okay, thank you though. From the Admiral. Wow, is my monitor on fire or is it just me? Yep, we are that hot. It's true. John Thomas, Digital Bill of Rights prohibit collection, require deletion, severe prison penalties. I mean, do we even have a digital bill of rights?
We do not have a digital bill of rights. We do not even have basic constitutional rights in the digital age. So let's fight for a little bit there. I mean, the government's even trying to ban end-to-end encryption. They succeeded in Australia. They have a backdoor law that they put in that said, basically, if you're a service that protects your customers' private messages, we want to be able to get access to them. And if you can't provide access, we will fine you tens of millions of dollars. And there could be jail term or like whatever. Like it's and the American government's been trying to pass something similar. So there's an ongoing war against privacy on the internet. Government says you cannot have it, and they try to put out all these puff pieces smearing privacy, saying it's only used for criminals. Meanwhile, there are people who are getting hurt by their privacy being leaked all the time, and no one's looking out for those people. So it's like an ongoing battle.
Right, like they could like seize your phone, like the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell just had his phone seized, and I think this is the kind of thing where they like if they want to make somebody out to look bad, they'll just I don't know, look at all your messages and create whatever narrative they want.
Absolutely.
From Premium Nick, Naomi Brockwell, a very pretty and cute redhead in the field of tech space. That's enough to simp for me. Oh, that's enough to simp for. Yes.
Thank
Naomi,
you for simping.
Naomi is very simp worthy. From 2 feet, let's meet. I finally found Ginger Cass. Yeah. Wouldn't that be great to do an all redhead show?
I think that's the way all shows should be. I'm going to start filtering my interview guests. Like, oh, you're an expert in this field, but what is your hair color?
Yeah. Would you be willing to change it?
Would you be willing to dye it?
This is like a little bit darker than I was like lighter all summer, and then it went a little darker.
Nice.
From NVIDIA, I welcome our Skynet overlords. No. Fight back. From Premium Nick, I've been utilizing the internet for over 20 years. Privacy is a fundamental way to preserve our lives. I thank you, Naomi Brockwell, for being a bright and very informative light to preserving privacy. Wow. That's what you call a simp right there. Yeah, privacy.
Privacy.
You don't want your nudes getting out.
Protect your nudes, just your recent ones.
Delete the ones that are bad. Matthew Hammond. Should we start only using cash? It is the only anonymous way to purchase goods outside of bartering.
Okay, so financial privacy. Actually, my next video coming out, which I am going to either film tonight or tomorrow, just been finishing off the script, is about financial privacy. And there's a great article put out by Jeffrey Fowler. I think it was like Washington Post or something a few years ago, that went through 6 different entities that your information first passes through when you make a credit card purchase. So there's like, your bank, for example. Did you know your bank has the ability, they have the right to, share all of your personal financial data with anyone. There's actually a law that was passed that said, hey, you guys can do this. You just need to write a privacy policy. You go to like Chase's privacy policy. It's pages and pages of them saying, we're sharing your data with everyone. And it's horrifying.
So that means like how much money you spend on certain, like if I spend an embarrassing amount of money on underwear,
the data about your purchases, where you bought the stuff, like there are even partnerships. So you've got not just your bank, you've got MasterCard and Visa, like the network itself. You've got the payment processor, which is like the terminal where you swipe your card. You've got the retailer's bank. You've got the store itself. All of these entities then share that data, and that gets shared with a bunch more. So everything that you do when you do a digital purchase is being shared with everyone, like thousands and thousands of companies, and stored in dossiers about you, which is then sold. And this data is very valuable, because this data means the difference between someone being able to advertise successfully to you or not. Or it could mean the difference between someone being able to know where you are so they can hack your crypto account or not. Like there's a lot of ways this data can be used. So yes, if you're swiping your plastic at a terminal, very, very bad. Few things that you can do. So cash, wonderful, but it's only for in person, right? What do you do when you're on the internet? And we all live on the internet now. So masked cards is another good thing you can do. So I use a service, I use 2 services actually. One of them is privacy.com. The other one is mysudo.com. And both of them allow you to create masked cards. So instead of someone knowing your real credit card number, you can give them a fake credit card number, which hides your real one. That's processed through privacy.com. They have like strong privacy policies where they say, we're not going to share this data with anyone. Also, you can set limits for that card. You could say this card can only ever be used once, so that no one can then, take that number and then reuse it. You could say that, there's a monthly limit on how much can be taken out of this card. Lots of cool tools you can do that give you more control. But then on top of that, there's cryptocurrency. So there are private cryptocurrencies, there are non-private cryptocurrencies. You can use non-private cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin more privately if you understand good security hygiene, if you understand about protecting your IP address. It's very difficult though, because you have to protect your MAC address, you have to protect your IP address, you have to protect all kinds of things for that to actually be private. But there are private cryptocurrencies as well, things that use zero knowledge proofs. So things like, Zcash is an example of a currency where if you send a shielded transaction, the sender isn't revealed, the recipient isn't revealed, the amount that's sent is not revealed, all of that's encrypted. No one can ever get access to that data. So there are lots of innovative tools coming out. It's just a matter of people starting to get comfortable with them, knowing how they can use them when it's possible. I would say like donations are a great way to start with cryptocurrency. If there's a particular cause that you don't necessarily want your name associated with, it can be a great idea to use like a private cryptocurrency so that you can support causes in a permissionless way. and still kind of retain the sovereignty over your own money. You know, like WikiLeaks, for example, famously, the government banned donations to them. They started accepting cryptocurrency. So that kind of was their lifeline. You have organizations like EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or Freedom of the Press Foundation. They all accept cryptocurrency. So you would probably be surprised that causes that you believe in. I think my garage door is just opening and closing. Got some wonderful noises. You would probably be surprised. Yeah, you would probably be surprised at how many organizations you probably care about accept cryptocurrency.
This is so fascinating. Okay. You're a wealth of knowledge. I'm like, I feel so lucky you're here. You're so darn smart. Okay. From Premium Nick, Naomi Brockwell for future Simcast and or content house so I can openly simp for more Naomi. Wow. We got Simps. Yeah, definitely come on Simcast. Simpcast.
I like that name. That's awesome.
It's a fun show. From John Thomas. I forget the court case, but once a private actor acts at behalf of the government, such as fascist book censoring the Hunter story, they become an agent. True.
I think that the government has a lot of power and we can all become agents. I mean, it's like they just got to find the leverage point. That's why it's important to minimize the attack surface and take away as many of those leverage point data pieces that you can.
I like that you call it privacy hygiene. That's like a great way to think about
privacy
it. And
hygiene.
Realizing that you do have more power than you realize to just do little tweaks here and there. From Waffle, don't use USA-based search engine. I read that they can abuse some law to force companies to share your data. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So this is complicated. Just because a country or a server is not in the United States doesn't mean that the long arm of the US law doesn't reach far and wide. US also has, a lot of leverage with other countries. They have a lot of power over international trade organizations and international monetary funds and all of these things. So there are a lot of ways that they can get whatever data they want, even if it's not in the United States. I would say that for search engines, I mean, keep in mind, if you want extreme privacy, you can achieve it, but it's very, very difficult. I think that if you're doing something that's criminal and you really need to hide your tracks, then you're going to, probably get caught, or you're going to have to become an absolute expert in all this stuff. But the stuff that I'm talking about is for the average person. It's for someone who's probably not going to be targeted by the government. It's just a way to help protect the stuff that's just you're giving out willingly currently. It's just about saying, hey, I'm just going to no longer make the choice to use products that just leak my information and people could just readily get it. Like if the government wants your information, they can probably find a way to get it regardless of what you're going to do. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to make it easy for them, whether or not, like if in 20 years they decide that you're a target, they can go after you, but you've now had 20 years of protecting that data. So they can't get that stuff that you never leaked in the first place, right? So it's just important to recognize what your threat model is. Are you an Edward Snowden? Are you being targeted by the most powerful adversary in the world? Or are you an everyday person who just wants freedom of speech and to be left alone to do your thing? And there are a lot of ways that you can actually carve out that freedom in your life right now by using better technology that doesn't give away all this information about you and provide those leverage points for other people.
Yeah, it's just about making it a little bit harder for them. From What's Up Front Porch, if reform-minded leaders were elected here in the U.S., what changes would you recommend be put into law to protect privacy, or are things irreversible?
Wow. Laws get tricky because you look at something like GDPR, which I think is a positive law. I'm not a law kind of person. I don't think laws are going to save us as my general mentality, because I just think that laws are so often used as like a rent-seeking tool for some companies over others. Like I just see so much I don't like some certain people getting the right to choose for the rest of us, things in our life. I think people should kind of be left alone to do what they want. And if they hurt people, if they take their stuff, then we can have laws around that stuff. Now, when it comes to privacy, it gets really murky because you also have to think about how enforceable is this law, and is this law actually going to achieve its ends? It's not enough to have something that just has good intentions if the result ends up being a negative. And GDPR, I think, for the most part, has net positive results. It gets people thinking about data collection in a different way, but it is also enforced really arbitrarily. And that's a dangerous tool in the hands of a government because, you could have Google that's skirting this law all the time, which they absolutely are with their real-time bidding system. And they've admitted to that in leaked documents. And if the government, the government can say, well, we're going to enforce that. Or the government can say, we might enforce that, but do this other thing for us. Otherwise, we'll enforce that. Or the government might say, oh, we're going to enforce that against your competition. Or, it gets to a point where if you have laws that are not uniformly enforced, they're just arbitrarily enforced, it creates a very unbalanced power structure. And I have a lot of issues with that. So I like to strip back the laws. Now, when it comes to privacy, politicians have also shown me that they don't understand it enough to create laws that will actually protect us. And what I mean by that is Europe, which has GDPR, which is oh, that's a good privacy law. They're now talking about oh, well, we need cross-compatibility in all privacy apps, which are probably what does that even mean? Why do I care about this? Basically, what they're saying is they want to lower the privacy standards of the most robust encrypted communications to the lowest common denominator so that everything's compatible with everything else. Why are they doing that? Let the people who want more privacy choose the better products. So when it comes to reforms and laws, I don't see that as being the bastion of hope. If there are people out there fighting for good reforms, all the best to them, and I hope that they succeed. I'm just not hopeful. I'm a little bit of a pessimist there. I think that educating companies to have better privacy practices for their customers, teaching people how to navigate this world. Let me take a step back. I think that the government likes collecting data about you. We know this. They like having these giant databases filled with information. Companies like collecting data about you, and we know this, and they have these big silos of information. So the impetus, all of the momentum is on the side of the data collection. Now, you can put in a law that says, no, not do that. What's going to happen? Is Facebook just going to suddenly abandon its business model? No, they're going to find a way to get around it and keep collecting your data. So the solution probably isn't all these Band-Aid laws that we're putting on top. The solution is getting people more informed about how their tech works. They're never going to become experts, but they just need to know enough to understand how that data is being collected, what they need to be aware of, and how to make better choices. And I think that's totally reasonable as an ask for the average person. This stuff isn't super complicated. It's just overwhelming. And once people realize that it doesn't have to be overwhelming, that it's actually really simple and people can take actionable steps that are super easy, they're trivial to implement, people get more comfortable with this. I'm not a techie person. As I said, I did my degree in classical music. This is not my wheelhouse. And yet I find this stuff every new area that I tackle where I'm oh, now I have to explore VPNs. I don't know anything about this. And then I do a video on it. And after that, I'm just wow, that was way easier than I realized. It's just the idea of it that's a bit daunting.
Yeah.
And I think that individuals need to understand they're more empowered than they might realize.
Well said. From Flagrant Triggers, Naomi, what are your thoughts on the Freedom Phone?
I have one recommendation for a private phone, and that is Graphene OS. And the reason why I like Graphene OS, it's built for the Pixel. And the reason it's built for the Pixel, which is a Google phone, you're probably Google hardware, is because it uses something called, it's compatible with Secure Boot, which is basically as open source as you can get for the processor in the phone. There's a lot going on in the hardware of phones that's murky and we don't really know what's going on and it's difficult to get to the bottom of. There have been people who put a lot of effort into making that more transparent and stripping out all of the stuff that could be compromising your privacy. I think Graphene OS does a great job of that. And basically you take a Pixel phone and you wipe Android and you put on a new operating system. And it's actually way easier than you realize. You go to a website and you like click some buttons and it's like, you got a new phone. It's like, thank you, website. Oh, it's very convenient. There are lots of tools out there that claim to be privacy preserving that are a little too opaque for me to be able to verify it, or they haven't had the right audits, or they're not open source, or, there are a lot of things. I believe, I haven't looked too deeply into Freedom Phone. I believe they use something called Clear OS, which is like kind of a derivation, like something in the wheelhouse of Graphene OS, but for reasons that I can't remember, I didn't like that OS as much as I like Graphene. I think that it uses a lot of buzzwords in its marketing. I have taken a look at their website and saw very little going into the details about how it protects privacy, just that, it's secure and private and all that. I like to read the white papers. I like to understand which protocols they're using. I like to know, like, is this the standard that security experts recommend, or is this some weird thing that they're doing there? So I'm not going to say that I don't recommend that phone, but I will say that if you're looking for something that's robust, my go-to for a de-Googled phone is Graphene OS.
Okay, cool. Do you feel like there's any merit in this comment from Douglas Dauntless? The government is more likely to track your data if you're constantly trying to conceal your data.
No, I don't think there's any merit to that at all. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think that if all of us protected our data, it would be like trying to find a needle in the haystack. We would actually be helping the whistleblowers and the activists and the people in society trying to effect change if we too protected our privacy. I think that certain tools can make you stand out more. Like, for example, if you're in a country that's banned VPNs and you're using a VPN, if you're in like Iraq or something, you're using a VPN, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. So there are certain tools that you need to be aware will make you stand out more. Tor traffic looks different to normal traffic. There are things you can do to make it look more similar, but it looks different. So people can tell when you're using these privacy preserving tools. I don't think that using them is a warning flag to say like, hey, look, scrutinize me closer. I actually think for the most part, your data is mainly getting siphoned up by Google and Facebook and Twitter and all, AT&T,
TikTok.
all of these, all these companies. So if you can start focusing on that and securing your data from those entities, you're going a long way. And that's not like just because you stop using Twitter or because you use a VPN with Twitter or because, you turned off location settings. That's not a red flag that tells the government, I'll scrutinize that person. That's just the company no longer getting as much data about you.
Yeah, you're like starving them out. From Premium Nick, Proton Mail, Proton VPN, TOR browser for the win. I don't know what a Tor browser is.
So Tor browser, it stands for the Onion Router. It's basically a way of taking your traffic. When you go and search for something on the internet, you're heading to a website. Basically, that traffic, instead of going from your computer directly to that website where they can see your IP address and all kinds of information about you, and they're like, we get these identifiers of a computer. Like, there's lots of data that can be revealed. Instead of doing that, you go through something called the Onion Network first, so that data is encrypted with many, many layers. And it does multiple hops before it reaches your destination. Every hop it does, you peel back a layer of encryption. So it's kind of like an onion. So you peel it back, you go to the next one, you peel it back. What that means is that it goes through all these nodes. All of the nodes in the middle, they just know that node directly before them where the data came from, and they know where they're sending it to, but they don't have any other information. So what you've effectively got is an entry node that knows who you are, but your data is encrypted, so it doesn't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's bounced around, it's all confused, and then you've got an exit node, so they know where you're going, but they don't know who it is. They don't know where that data came from. So it's a way of obfuscating your traffic so that you can't, it helps you browse the internet anonymously.
So they don't know who's looking at these shoes.
Exactly, those shiny shoes. It's all a secret.
From Alcid, Putin was late for his speech about privacy. Weather was terrible, and he got Snowden.
Zing.
Wow. There's just a lot of funny people that watch this show. Okay. Right. Oh, Snowden. Yeah, we figured it out. Thanks,
We
Elsie.
figured it out.
Wow, interesting. I feel. Oh, and I also want to mention there's hacking going on with Ring cameras as well, and just about everybody I know has one of those because everybody wants to see if there's any creeps in their driveway or lurking in the backyard. But people are actually able to get in there. Like there was one case that you mentioned in a video. I think it was one of your videos where there was a guy like talking to an 8-year-old girl through the cameras, like creeping her
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, you should be aware if you have any cameras in your house and they're connected to the internet, hackers will find a way to get to them. So be really aware of what you're filming. So Ring recently has upped its privacy. They were notorious years ago for hacks, happened all the time, people just getting access to private footage. They've implemented end-to-end encryption. But it's not on by default. This means that if you turn it on and you use a Ring camera, you will lose a lot of features. You will no longer be able to see your timeline. You'll no longer be able to integrate with Alexa, like whatever else you want to do. I strongly encourage you to turn on end-to-end encryption if you use a Ring camera, or throw that Ring camera out. Because if you do not, you are basically putting your private footage in the cloud for anyone to take a look at. Also, Ring cameras can record conversations up to 30 foot. So if you're in your lounge room having a private conversation, the microphones will be able to pick that up, right? So just know what private information you're putting out there. They spent years and years building up partnerships with law enforcement, where they would basically give police departments free, products and say, hey, join our public, network, and encourage people in your community to install them. So police departments started going and doing the work of Amazon that owns Ring, and started getting people to install them. And then what happened, third-party doctrine, because Ring has that footage, it's considered the property of Ring, and you started to have law enforcement going to Ring to get copies of footage, your private footage. Now, there was outcry about this, and again, they've started to back off from the extent of this. But they admitted that in the last year, they admitted to 11 times that they have, without the user's consent or knowledge, given law enforcement private footage. And they say that, like, oh, well, it's only in the case of emergency. But I don't trust either Amazon or law enforcement to decide
what an emergency is.
Exactly. So I would just be careful if you are going to use Ring end-to-end encrypted. That means that they do not have access to your footage. It means that a hacker who gets into their database doesn't get access to your footage. It means only you have access to it. Or I would choose a more private system, but I have really bad news. I haven't been able to find a really secure home camera setup. I have another video coming out, I think, in a week, in 9 days. And it is exploring a bunch of different options. The best I've come up with, and there's a spoiler, now you don't have to watch my video because I'm telling you got the scoop right here on the show. The best I've found is Apple HomeKit, which is an encrypting service. If you link a third-party camera like Reolink or something to your Apple HomeKit, it takes a local setup not connected to the internet, it encrypts that, and it gives you cloud access. So it solves the issue of you being able to access your footage when you're not home, but it does it in a secure way. That's probably the most private setup that I have found. Ring does have end-to-end encryption now. I don't trust Amazon, so I wouldn't put their stuff around my home. But if you do have a Ring camera and you plan to keep using it, I would turn off recording audio by default on your doorbell, and I would end-to-end encrypt it. I would add a really strong password because hackers get into those things all the time, and I would make sure you have the strongest 2FA possible.
And what's a 2FA? Oh, two-factor authentication.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think, Naomi, you should start like a privacy gang, like your group, and I feel like you would call each other like the Encrypts.
The Encrypts. Are you like the first member of my Encrypts? Did we just start this? Did we just start a club?
Honorary member of the Encrypts.
The Encrypts. Yeah.
Except
all right, let's do it.
We're only violent about privacy.
Exactly. Non-aggression principle, except when privacy. Then we are going to be so proactive.
Yeah, it'd be the initiation for the Encrypts, getting off of Gmail and making a Proton mail.
Yeah, that's a great first step. Look at you. You're like an expert at this stuff.
I'm already thinking about a gang symbol for us. Yeah.
Well, that we got to get our priorities straight. So that would be the first step I'd go to as well.
Okay. Wow. I feel motivated. Crash Mondo, just gotta pay my simp tax for Naomi. Wow, you've got a lot of fans. I have to get you on
Sim
Simcast.
taxes.
No good home security company exists. Sounds like a potential business opportunity.
Completely agree. If you're a technologist, I think there are a lot of people who'd like to protect their footage more.
God, even more so. Like I'm not even, you know what I mean? Like my search history is like not, but I know I'm walking around like in my underwear and like, what if someone's like, Chrissie says she's on keto, but here's footage of her downing a whole pizza.
Yeah.
That would, that'd
It's
be
like
terrible.
that frog in boiling water scenario where you don't realize how bad things have gotten, because you have companies like ADT, right? Where they start out with just motion sensors and you have someone monitoring your home 24/7. You're like, that's great. They can just see motion. They can't see anything. They can't hear me, whatever. They can just tell if there's like, a water leak or whatever, a camera or light was activated. And then ADT adds cameras to the mix that are unencrypted, and you still have 24-hour, 7 days a week surveillance monitoring your home. And then you end up with some ADT employee who ends up getting fired because he literally would make a note of all the attractive females he'd install cameras in the houses of, and then go and jerk off to them. Can I say jerk off on your podcast? I just did.
Oh my God.
He's the one who got caught, right? Imagine how many companies out there wouldn't even fire that employee, would just pay them hush money so that stuff doesn't get out because they would get sued. People need to protect their cameras if they're using cameras at home. Also, cover your
Camera.
computer camera. Cover your.
Mark Zuckerberg does that. He put tape over his own laptop.
Tape on both sides of there.
Wait, what do you mean tape on both sides?
Obviously,
Like when you're not using your camera
that you've downloaded, that you've given access to access your camera, there's just an honor system that's stopping them from doing it all the time. Even Facebook was caught a couple of years ago. They had their cameras rolling every time you used to scroll. They said it was a bug.
Right.
Bollocks.
So they can see they can make note of
they can
all
see
your facial
is she looking
expressions.
angry? Is she like, and we don't even know if you've given an app permission to access your camera, they can access your camera. That's the only technical limitation that was in place, and you just removed it. So yeah, you should delete apps that you don't use, delete apps that you have given camera permissions to that you don't think they need camera permissions, and you should cover your camera.
But what do you do if you need to take a selfie? You
just undo it.
Okay.
Look how gross my phone is. Look at this.
Wow, no, mine's grosser. It's brown in the middle. It didn't used to be like this. It was just purple to
Mine just has
green.
black marks from my electrical tape that I take off. Electrical tape is the way to go, by the way. I've tried painter's tape. You can only put painter's tape back on like 4 times before it starts to fall off. Electrical tape, this stuff lasts months.
Wow, okay. I am overwhelmed. I am feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. But I'm excited to join the Encrypts with you. And
you can't say it without the hand signals.
Yeah, maybe E. Like maybe the symbol should be E. Like make it look like an E.
Is that an E?
No, this looks like I'm doing the shocker. Or I can pull out. This is what my brother sent to me because I got engaged. He was like, "Oh, I can't make it to the engagement party, but like, thank you. But look out, I'm sending you a gift." And he sent me this. But now it looks like it could be our Encrypt gang
symbol?
sign. Yeah. I think it actually means like love in sign language.
Nice. Oh, that's actually a really sweet present. I thought it was
sweet?
like a gang symbol from your brother, but if it's love, that's sweet.
It is sweet. I've been shitting on this for a couple weeks. It's just fun to pull out and show people and be like that. But it's I think I'm gonna leave it out and I'm gonna put it as part of my set. There we go.
Yeah.
the Encrypts. Wow, Naomi, you're such a wealth of information and knowledge, and I'm just so impressed with you. And I feel like we could do so many more episodes about this, about these topics.
All of them.
Yeah. Get in private with Naomi.
Oh, that's a little bit sassy. Get in private.
Where can people find you? What other videos are coming up? And yeah, anything else you want to shout out?
So I have a YouTube channel. It is Naomi Brockwell TV. You can go there, and I put the exact same content also out on Odyssey. I have a big Odyssey channel as well, so odyssey.com. If you go and watch it on Odyssey, it is more privacy preserving than watching it on YouTube. So good to know that if you don't have an Odyssey channel. I'm also on a bunch of other platforms, so BitChute and Minds and whatever. That's for long form content. So every week we'll put out like a 15-minute video that deep dives into something like this. Like we'll explore most private browser, or we'll explore most private camera setup, which is a video that's coming out soon. And then I also do really short form, because I realized that a lot of people don't like long videos that are techie, and they're like, why are you talking technical things at me? So I started making really dumb videos where I'm like, hey, everyone, this is me being an idiot. Also, here's a privacy fact. Whoa. And it got really
sneak
popular.
it in there. Okay.
Yeah, I snuck it in there. So now people watch the shorts, which are under a minute long. So if you have a shorter attention span, or if you just don't want to listen to me as much, which is totally, I get it, right? I have to listen to myself all the time. If you just want to listen to me, and like, if you're like 1 minute is your max, then you can I have a separate YouTube channel for that. It's also on TikTok, which I would not recommend you download. It's also on Instagram, which I would not recommend you download. But you can also watch all YouTube content through NewPipe or proxies that don't make you go through YouTube. So lots of privacy preserving ways to watch my short form content as well. So you can head to that. It's called Naomi Privacy Tips on like Instagram and TikTok. And then there's Twitter, which is just Naomi Brockwell. I'm all over the social medias, and on a lot of decentralized social medias. So if you prefer like memo.cash or read.cash or I don't know, Hive or any of these other platforms, you'll probably find me there, and you can ping me there, and I will say hi.
It would be so funny if like all your videos, everything was just private. Like nobody could find out anything about you. Like,
where can I find your stuff? You can't.
Yeah, I'm walking the walk, okay? I gotta work harder.
No, I sacrifice a lot of my privacy to put these videos out. But if I can help just get one person to switch off, Gmail or Google services, I think that is a win, because honestly, I think this is an important fight. I think people don't realize we're in the middle of a fight, and they don't realize what the stakes are. And as soon as they do realize, that's when it's going to be too late. So we need to be preemptive about this and realize how powerful our data is, and just protect it. It's easy. It's easy.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm feeling excited. I'm ready to get back into Proton Mail. This was such a great chat. You're such a delight. Please come on Simcast for more of a fun, lighthearted conversation. Everybody follow Naomi. She's the best. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. And thank you to the chat for you had a lot of good questions, chat. So props to you guys.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time.